I think we are ready to start. Peter Maravellis here. I hope this finds you all safe and well. On behalf of City Lights booksellers and publishers, I'd like to welcome you to City Lights Live, the virtual reading series that continues in the footsteps of our in-store calendar during the time of the pandemic. We continue to celebrate the works of authors we know and love with readings, discussions, forums, and much, much more moving into the spring season. We've got many awesome events coming up in the weeks and months to come. Please visit us at www.citylights.com to learn more. Tonight, we are delighted to welcome back to City Lights award-winning poet Kim Addonizio. We are celebrating the release of her new poetry collection called Now We're Getting Somewhere. It's published by the venerable W.W. Norton. Ms. Adenizio is the author of 8 poetry collections, 2 novels, 2 short story collections, and 2 books on writing poetry. These include The Poet's Companion, written with Dorianne Laux, and the book Ordinary Genius. Her poetry collection, Tell Me, was a finalist for the National Book Award, and her 2016 collection, Mortal Trash, won the Paterson Poetry Prize. Ms. Adenizio has received fellowships from the National Endowment of the Arts, the Guggenheim Foundation, amongst other honors. She makes her home in Oakland, California, and she is truly, according to City Lights, and we really feel this very strongly, one of our great cultural and poetic treasures here in the Bay Area. So she will be joined tonight by a chorus of gifted poets we are equally honored to have with us: Brittany Parham, Peter Kline, and Tracy Knapp. Brittany is a Jones Lecturer in Poetry at Stanford University, where she was a Wallace Stegner Fellow from 2009 to 2011. She is the author of numerous books, most recent being Double Portrait, published by W.W. Norton. Her work may be found in the Bellevue Literary Review and Drunken Boat, Tri-Quarterly, as well as other outlets. She lives in San Francisco. Peter Kline teaches writing at the University of San Francisco, and with Stanford University's Master of Liberal Arts program, a former Wallace Stegner Fellow, his poems have received numerous honors. His work has appeared in Plowshares, 5 Points, Tin House, and many other places. He is the director of the San Francisco literary reading series Bizarre Writers Salon, which he founded in 2012. His newest collection, Mirror Forms, was published by Parlor Press and Free Verse Editions in the fall of 2019. And finally, Tracy Knapp is a poet living in Berkeley. Her work has appeared in Poetry Daily, Rattle, 5 Points, the New Ohio Review, and elsewhere. She has received numerous honors for her work, including a Pushcart Prize nomination. Her first full-length collection of poems, Mouth, was published by 42 Miles Press. Before we start, I'd like to let you all know that we'll be posting links in the chat function with which you can purchase books. We'll also be taking questions and comments from the audience at that same location for the Q&A at the end of the evening, so please do post your questions there. Such a pleasure to have you back in our orbit once again. Kim Addonizio. Also, warm welcome to Brittany, Peter, and Tracy. Welcome to City Lights Live.
Yes, yes. Thank you all for being here. So I'm going to take it away, right?
It's all yours.
And he's going to do his Vanishing Act. Nice. So great. It's great to see you all. I'm kind of toggling a little bit to see who's here, but really excited to see you guys. Thanks so much for coming out. It means a lot to me. Really does. So really happy to be here. I'm really happy to be at City Lights. As Peter says, please do buy books and support this amazing, iconic bookstore that is still struggling, as all indie bookstores are struggling right now through this whole crazy time. So please, spend generously if you can. And, as I said in a note to some of you, let them know that poetry sells and your name doesn't have to be Rupi Kaur. So I invited some friends to join me, and they're going to start off reading 5 minutes apiece. And then I'll read, and then we'll have some time to chat and take questions and comments and hang out a little bit. So I'm going to start by introducing my good friend Brittany Parham, who's, I don't know what you're going to read, but you've already had an introduction. So here's Brittany.
Thank you. Oh, it's so great to be celebrating with Kim tonight and to see all of you. I am just so excited for this new book of hers. If you have a special glass of anything, we can raise it to her and say congratulations. Someday soon we will be doing this in person. But for now, thank you all for being boxes here and being with us and celebrating Kim. It's really fun. Kim is such a beloved of mine, and I just feel like she has held open this space for poets in the Bay Area that is, you know, a great thing to be part of, and I'm really grateful to her for that, and also just for her work. You're all here because you probably love her poems, and me too. So I thought I would just read one poem tonight. From a chapbook that Kim and I did together, actually, just to celebrate her work. And this chapbook has a series of my prose poems and a series of Kim's poems that sort of fit together in, I don't know, a kind of constellation. And Kim, you can I don't know, disagree with this, but a kind of constellation of poems about love, longing, sadness, being in bathroom stalls, drinking, being in bars, right? Like, so the poems have kind of constellated together. And it was so fun to do this with Kim and to get to be a collaborator. As all of you who are writers know, it can be a lonely business. And, you know, I've been glad to have these chances, like not to be alone doing this, and Kim is a large part of that. So I'll just read you one poem. The chapbook is called "The Night Could Go in Either Direction," and this is part of that prose poem series. And you'll just notice that it has a lot of repetition. It follows a palindrome kind of form in prose, so you'll hear it sort of repeating forward and backwards. It began innocently. We agreed in advance. We kissed in the bar's back room after the band was through. We told everyone. Neither of us knew who'd started with whom, and who knew what was going to continue. Not the banking system, not the snowy winters. The tulip room was lit up and emptying. We kissed our friends goodbye and bought another round. We flirted with the drummer. I bought the t-shirt and brought the car around. You closed out in cash, late nights only currency, and waited in the alley. You were autographed. Then you reversed your glove and got the drummer's number. The roads were iced over. The roads iced over, I pulled over. Are you calling that number? Gloves off. Then autograph, alleyway, cash only late, nights current reversing around us, the car, while almost everything closed outside. You pulled up my t-shirt. We forgot the drummer. Don't kiss me goodbye, buy me another. The moonlit room was still lit and empty. Fuck the snowy winters, fuck the system, fuck me. Who knew whether this was going to continue? Neither of us cared who'd started with whom. We told no one we fucked in the bar bathroom while no band played. We agreed in advance, innocently. It began. Thanks. Congratulations, Kim.
Thanks, B. Thank you. That's it. That's all we get. Love that piece. Thank you. I have to remember my alphabet now because we're going in alphabetical order. Peter Kline is going to read next.
Thanks, Kim. It's such a pleasure to be here in support of your wonderful new book. Such a pleasure to see all of you here. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming out. Thanks to City Lights. I'll just get right to the work. I'm going to read two brief poems from my most recent book called Mirror Forms, and then one more after that. And so these mirror forms. All the poems in this book are basically the same form. The first line and the last line are the same, so you'll hear that. There's a couple other characteristics to the form, which you'll also kind of hear as it goes. So these are both monologues, so they kind of take on a character. The first one is called The Living Dead. Asleep with the light left on, I dream in animation. I'm a zombie porno station. Grubworms binge on the lawn. Someone left the dog on and it died. It's on vacation. We're all flying toward that nation, asleep with the light left on. And the second poem I'll read here, also a mirror form, is called Worrier. Worrier. I know what it must be, but I can't bear to check. Playing patience with a short deck, counting back from infinity until it's time to see that no one hid. I've heard even God has a safety word. I know what it must be. And the last poem I'll read is a poem that the next poet, Tracy Knapp, actually just featured in her guest issue of The Shrew. So this is kind of for Tracy as well. This poem is called, it's a San Francisco poem too. So this poem is called Rim Shots. Another sun-drunk San Francisco day. I spend it indoors, working on the riff to lithium. Almost 40, I still can't reliably floss. New technology will solve all of my problems. Students feel awkward using my first name. I insist on proper titles, but only in bed. 1 year in 6, my salary goes to booze. I still can't write a poem that I can eat. Adjunct. Something added, but not essential. Don't lie. Does this corduroy make me look smart? Got bumped in the crosswalk by a new Z4. Poets are the unacknowledged litigators of the world. Thank you so much, and congratulations, Kim.
Oh, thanks. You know, Peter, when you read that, when you said rim shot, it's probably, I know it's a basketball term, right?
No, it's the
Comedic ba-dum-bump.
yeah, it is a basketball term, but that too, yeah.
There's another meaning. I'm guessing. Great, thank you, Peter. And we're gonna hear from Tracy Knapp.
Congratulations, Kim, and thank you for inviting me to read for your book launch. I'm so excited for the book. I'm going to start with a poem from my book called Goodbye, Milwaukee. I guess I should just say I have nothing to do with Milwaukee, and if you do, I'm sorry or jealous. Goodbye, Milwaukee. To my landlord, your delicate wife, I am sorry about my dog, your rug. I will send you a new rug from China. I might go to China. I might go to Maine. So goodbye, Milwaukee, and your decadent egg burgers, your skinny-legged trot to the truck in the early flurries, the truck bed, your pickups and takeouts. Goodbye to your high school high fives. Goodbye to my hometown. I made it out alive. I survived every late night at the high dive, 3 shots, 4 beers, and $5 at the jukebox. Ain't too proud to beg, but I don't have to. There's some drummer from Detroit buying me another, brushing my hair aside. Goodbye to my 20s, my youthful thighs. I had plenty of time. I had plenty of French fries too. Fried pickles, fried jalapenos, fried zucchini, fried olives, chicken fried steak, triple fried chicken, the dazzling deep fried blossoming onion, and I'll have the halibut pan fried. Dear sausage, goodbye. I have known for some time. Dear summer thigh sweat, gym treadmills, the elevator guy. Dear 2125 Prospect Avenue, goodbye. I love you. I'm leaving. There are a box of your t-shirts on your back porch, and you can drop off the year of 2020 anytime. And I'm wearing a Kim glove. You haven't noticed. And then this is a poem called At the Gallery. And then this will be my last poem before I start my trilogy. Joking. At the Gallery. I don't know why I bother. This art is obvious turf for the truant guest. I'm the one in the corner who gulps the free rosé and strains to find the stunt that stirs the biggest riot. Some secret spit on the rested urn or a perfect fist through the headless bust. Yet no one dares to roast the artist, his pallid trust in friends who fuss over his abstracted reign, an agonizing burst of stars above a campfire. I'm probably the shallow one, too smug to put my own iron in the flame, to make my own unfit decapitations. Still, there's always time to stuff an apple into the mouth of my hoggish frustrations. Thanks everyone, and Kim Addonizio to my left.
Thank you. Yeah, great. Thank you guys. I'm really glad you're here. All those links are showing up in the chat. So, you know, if you like something you heard by these guys, they've all written wonderful books. And don't hesitate, because you will be happy that you bought any of these books. Okay, well, I wanted to kick off the reading at the very opening with a poem by Fairlane Getty, but I was too nervous seeing all your faces fill the screen to remember at the beginning. So I'm going to read this poem now before I go into my own work. Coney Island of the Mind was a book that I was given when I was about 19 years old. And I didn't read poetry then, and I don't remember that I thought much about it at the time. And it was probably 9 or 10 years later that I actually began to tune into poetry. So, but it was the first poetry book that I ever owned, Coney Island of the Mind by Lawrence Ferlinghetti. So, and when I reread some of those poems, I remembered them. You know, I remember beauty spread-eagled in the empty air of existence, and you a little Charlie Chaplin man. You know, I remembered it all these years. So I'm going to read a different one. I'm going to read number 13 from Coney Island of the Mind by Ferlinghetti. Not like Dante discovering a commedia upon the slopes of heaven, I would paint a different kind of paradiso, in which the people would be naked, as they always are in scenes like that, because it is supposed to be a painting of their souls. But there would be no anxious angels telling them how heaven is the perfect picture of a monarchy, and there would be no fires burning in the hellish holes below, in which I might have stepped, nor any altars in the sky, except fountains of imagination. I just think that's such a beautiful poem. Heaven as a monarchy and the fountains of imagination, and that's really, you know, that's what keeps us sane and human. So, you know, R.I.P. Lawrence Ferlinghetti, and so glad that he had the foresight and the vision to start this bookstore and make it what it is today. So I'm gonna read all from this new book. What now we're getting somewhere, which has sort of flipped between being an ironic title and a hopeful title. And I'm sure that'll keep happening. And it's kind of framed by these two epigrams because I'm not sure there's really any characteristic poem in here, but I'll read you the is it epigram or epigraph? I always get them confused. Epigraph. So the two epigraphs of this book are Everybody Knows the Captain Lied, Leonard Cohen, and I think we all know who that one was about and continues to be about and probably will again. And the other is from Elizabeth Taylor, Pour Yourself a Drink, Put on Some Lipstick, and Pull Yourself Together. So this is the first poem in the book. It's called Night in the Castle. I'm not sure what to do about that scorpion twitching on the wall. Maybe I should slam it with this book of terrible poetry, or just read aloud to it until it dies of a histrionic metaphor bleeding out on the ancient stones in a 5-octave aria. If I get a little drunker, I might try to murder it with my sandal. I gave up on mercy a while ago. That's what happens when you live in a castle on an artist's grant. You look at the late afternoon Umbrian light smearing itself over the tomato vines and feel entitled, like an underage duchess whose husband has finally died of gout, leaving her free for more secret liaisons with the court musician. She might even have poisoned the Duke, the lecherous shit. It's hard to remember what life was like before this, and I don't want to. I want to stay here and poison the king next. I want to be a feared and beloved queen, ordering up fresh linens and beheadings, locking up bad poets in their artisanal hair shirts, torturing academics with pornographic marionette performances. Meanwhile, the scorpion is still there twitching slightly, reciting something about violence and the prison of ego. And I can hear the clashing armies on the wide lawn outside, sinking down to history and then standing up again. And this is a sort of, I guess it's sort of like it's a blues poem. It's in the form of a blues with the repetitions and the rhymes, or with some of the repetitions and the rhymes. And it's called Black Hour Blues. It was written before George Floyd, but we know that stuff has been ongoing since the beginning. So it's still, unfortunately, news that stays news. And I want to say that it's not only about Black Lives Matter, although that's a piece of it, but the word black is sort of like a magnet attracting all these different filings and meanings. So sometimes it's just literally the color. Sometimes it refers to something else. Sometimes it's got the traditional associations with night or violence. And I think you'll be able to tell what's what. It name checks a few different places that seems to me very much a part of this kind of writing, which is saying the names, whether it's the names of people or the names of places, or other kinds of naming that keeping it alive, keeping it in our consciousness. So, and you'll recognize some things. I think you'll recognize most of this stuff. And the ending is an image of Lady Justice. Black Hour Blues. Nothing is the new black shit soundtrack. The elk's black blood leaks from the roof rack. Black the prospects of the destitute sick. Blackberries suppurate in the pie tin. Green cards burnt black in the gas-lit oven. Black mold loitering in the privacy of prison. Black Deepwater Horizon, pelican and dolphin, through standing rock a black worm crawls. Black Baltimore, Mali, Iraq, Sudan, Cambodia, Sinai, Selma, ugh. The darkling beetle raises its black back and runs through the black ghost ship and Grenfell Tower ruins. Black Syria, Somalia, Ferguson, Attica, Gaza, Yemen, Black heart weighed against an ostrich plume. Blindfolded goddess, long sword drawn, nowhere in the come down, come down. And this is actually another formal poem because it's a sonnet in mono rhymes. And I wrote it after being really blocked for quite a while and unable to write and feeling really frustrated. And, I'm never going to write again. But luckily, I have my friends to say, "Oh, Kim, you say that all the time. Remember when you said that? And then you wrote this, and then you wrote the other thing." So it happened after a visit to the land art of Walter de Maria in New Mexico, where we were spending time in the desert, which for me is just a really sacred and magical place. I don't know why, but I always feel at home when I go to the desert. So this is High Desert, New Mexico. Temple of the rattlesnake's religion, deluge and heat surge, crash of the atom's rupture. Night blackens like a violin, and bright flower falls from the kitchens of heaven. This is where the seams begin to loosen, where you can walk for miles in any direction. Rabbit, lizard, raven, insect drone, and almost forget the shame of being human. Smoke tree, sage, not everything is broken. Horses appear at this remote cabin to stand outside and wait for you to come with a single apple. Abandon your despair, you who enter here forsaken. The wind is saying something. Listen. And this poem takes its title from a poem by Paul Guest, which is "The Earth is About Used Up." And it lides into the first line. So, the earth is about used up, like a sodden tampon and no place to throw it away. Like an armpit yellowed vintage blouse with see-through pearl bubble sleeves. Like a tissue travel pack in a foreign bathroom and you have to squat over a hole in the floor. The earth is about used up is the point I'm trying to drunkenly steer through the potholed streets into the suburban garage of your ears, though you probably already know what's up with the earth, but I am telling you because the earth is about used up, like the preserved, atrophied brain of a retired NFL defensive lineman leaking cryoprotectant. Like the tender ass of the cow and the large heart of the racehorse. Like a wind-up ladybug, crawling in decelerating circles on Lux Touch marble tiles inlaid with precious stones. Even the ocean is gasping for air, while someone smokes a cigarette through their throat hole and sodas go flat in the heat. And a stack of National Geographics bloats in a rained-on cardboard box in a fallen shed some animal dragged itself into to shit away its life. I'm standing on that box with my teeny megaphone, bringing you the news you know, wildly virtual signaling, waving my mortal handkerchief, dropping it at your feet, where it burns, here, I don't want it, you take it, please, you take it. And after that, maybe we all need a drink. And I wrote a little drinking song that is, I love Dorothy Parker. She's actually one of my favorite poets, and I bet you know her poem, Resume. Razors pain you, rivers are damp, acid stain you, and drugs cause cramp. Guns aren't lawful, nooses give, gas smells awful, you might as well live. So I did my own little turn on that one, Resume, after Dorothy Parker. Families shame you, rehab's a scam, lovers drain you and don't give a damn, friends are distracted, aging stinks, you'll soon be subtracted, you might as well drink.
Cheers.
So I think we can all raise a glass to that one. Yeah, okay, this is, gosh, there are more formal poems in this book than I realized. I love form, and especially the sonnet, but I thought this book had very little formal poetry in it. In fact, it has a few, because here's another one that I kind of forgot I'd written this way, and it's actually another monorhyme sonnet. The Miraculous. The band starts the song over The rhythm's still wrong, sounds that will never alchemize to music. My brother's new liver is failing. There's someone's loud lover swearing to Christ in the bar to get sober, but the moon is being smothered by the trees and there is no ladder far enough. I go down to the mouth of the river, ugly with waste, yellow foam and trash, a tanker crawling the horizon. What does it bear, oil or chemicals? I was taught a man could walk on water, that if I listened and unhinged my heart, I'd hear a presence stirring the air. And I do. God, the murderer, making things perfectly clear. And just a couple more. This is for Tracy, because and for Elizabeth, actually, who's here too. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Beth. My housemate is here from Minnesota, and please come back. It's been so long that I've been here alone, but I know Beth has had the pleasure of your company, so but I miss you. So this is a poem for Elizabeth and Tracy, because we were down in Mexico on vacation together, and this little place called Yalapa, which is almost like an island. You have to get there by boat, and it's across from Puerto Vallarta, but nothing like Puerto Vallarta. And something happened, and you know the way sometimes a poem just it shows up, and you go, oh my God, that is I've got to write about that. And I remember saying at the time, I am going to write about this, and it turned into this poem. So this is called The Art of Poetry, and it also well, if you know the Pablo Neruda poem Arte Poetica, his Art of Poetry, it kind of takes some of the strategies from that. Like, he begins with the word between, and I can't remember the lines, but if you look at his poem, it's a little bit in dialogue. This one's a little bit in dialogue with his Art of Poetry. Between coffee and fentanyl, between love me and go fuck yourself, there's so much life to be gotten through. So many mirrors to challenge in your ragged robe and collagen essence Korean facial mask. Eventually you have to go out and walk around in the world like you belong there. You have to smile at work and buy things when you just want to crawl into a closet and live in an old cowboy boot and write witty, unhinged verses, which sometime before the death of the sun, an advanced civilization will discover, etched into the ancient leather, preserved in a rock formation, and display in a luminous floating interdimensional sphere. Question: ever notice how many writers write about writing? A few centuries ago, Horace wrote approvingly of a poet. He intends not smoke from flame, but light from smoke, which I think is good advice if you can follow it. But he also said that to paint a dolphin in the trees or a boar in the waves is an unnatural distortion, and I thought about how much I'd like to see that, and how unrealistic it is to expect things to stay in their places. Why not someone's grieving widow consoled by a nebula, a suicide vomiting flowers? In the 20th century, Pablo Neruda wrote his own Arte Poetica, lamenting all the things that called to him without being answered. And reading it, I thought about that time in a tiny fishing village in Mexico, a third mango Rita, water falling through my liver, the waitress coming toward me in a white t-shirt with black lettering that said, "I have no tits," which was clearly a lie, though her stomach was kind of big, which had the effect of making them appear to recede, like the single taillights of two antique Model A Fords sputtering together toward obsolescence. Question: does she even know what it says? I have no tits. What is the message? Is this perhaps a code? Could it be from the future? Is it a "ceci n'est pas une pipe" situation, like in that painting of a pipe? Or a new far-reaching campaign from the U.S. Ministry of Enlightenment and Propaganda? The thieving president wearing a golfing shirt that says, "I have no clothes"? Question, who killed poetry again and who cares? Between false flags and homeless laundry lines, between long-lasting eyebrow gel and little-known destinations profiled in the New York Times, I don't know where anyone is going or where there is to get to. The days and nights keep drunkenly arriving, the guests are all dying, and I'm starting to feel pretty sick. So, you know, when a waitress walks toward you with that on her t-shirt, it's a gift. And that's what I made of it. And I'm going to end with this poem called Stay. So your device has a low battery and seems to drain faster each day. Maybe you should double your medication. You might feel queasy, but also as if the spatula flattening you to the fry pan has lifted a little. So your breath comes out scorched. So what? Inside, trust me on this, there's a ribbon of beach by a lake. In the sand, fragments of a fossilized creature resembling a tulip. Back in the Paleozoic, online wasn't invented yet, so everyone had to wander alone and miserable through the volcanic wastes, or just glue themselves to a rock, hoping someone would pass by. Now you can sob to an image of your friend a continent away and be consoled. Please wait for the transmissions, however faint. Listen, when a stranger steps into the elevator with a bouquet of white roses not meant for you, they're meant for you. Thanks. So that one also, I don't know if Elizabeth remembers that, but that walk by the lake and finding the little fossilized creature like a tulip, that was from a walk we took by a lake in Michigan several years ago. So it's funny how things find their ways into poems. You know, I feel like our brain is collecting things all the time as writers, which I'm guessing many of you are. You know, when you're a writer, things just go in there somewhere and into the workshop, and the elves get busy, and then one day you're sitting there writing, and the elves go, here, here's something, you know, and it's interesting the way those things just kind of come in, so that the more you take in various ways in your life, you know, the more you, as Fellini said, that you should live spherically. And the more you live spherically and sort of in different directions, I think the more kinds of things start to pinball around in your brain and become just part of what's available to you as a writer and accessible to you. So I know that's certainly been my experience. But yeah, we'd love to talk with you. We'd love to know you're buying books. Any book, it doesn't have to be mine. Buy a book by someone else if you only have money to spare for one book, but buy it through City Lights and bookshop.org, because they will get that money and it will support them, and we need them. You know, we need them with Amazon like the blob sort of coming and covering everything and sucking it up. I think we need human interaction in bookstores more than ever, and people that can recommend books that aren't from an algorithm. So, yeah, and that doesn't happen, you know, that doesn't happen unless we really support them and we support the community that we are all a part of. And so important to do that, you know, whether you're just starting out to write or you've been doing it a long time. It's how we survive, and we are a space in the world that survives by community, I think, you know, because we don't make a lot of money. We are part of the economic engine, but in so many ways we're not, you know, and I think that just to really make that commitment on some level, that whatever you can is just so important. So I'll stop my pitch now and be happy to, and, you know, if you have questions for any of us, or you want to just make a comment about what you heard, love to just have a conversation as much as we can in this weird format. And Peter, who did the Disappearing Act, I think he was gonna I'm not sure how we're going to do these questions, but I guess if you want to, I think that everyone is muted and you can't unmute yourselves apparently. So I guess if you have a question, um, put it right now in the chat or comment, and I'll just read it aloud, or we can take turns reading aloud and trying to respond to whatever you've got. Oh, here's A.K. Kaiser, PhD, who wrote in the chat, not part of it makes for greater freedom too. That's great. I love that. But does anybody have a question they want to offer up? I see my cousin's here. Hi, Kim. I know you can't speak to me because you're muted, but I see you, and it's great to see you here. My cousin is also named Kim Addonizio, or was, which is how we found out we were cousins.
Kim, do you want me to unmute somebody?
Well, I guess I'm not sure how to.
Just pick someone. I mean, I can unmute them.
Yeah, if somebody wants to raise their hand, maybe we can look at
Yeah,
who's.
we could do that.
Yeah, anybody want to raise their hand with a question and we can unmute you? I'm going back
Kim,
to.
in the meantime, you got a couple of questions over here in the chat.
Oh, I do. Okay, you want to read?
Yes. What has your last year of writing been like, and how long did it take you to complete the poems and compile them for this book?
Okay, yeah. These are poems from about 2015 on. So that's about 5 years worth of writing and culling. And some of them were written, in early 2020 as the pandemic hit, and then sort of tweaked thereafter. So I guess probably up till, spring of 2020 is when the book kind of went to the publisher. And I actually then, after Norton took it and I knew it was going to come out, in a year from that time, I was still doing some writing, and so some of those poems from sort of mid 2020 also went into the book because I could still, nothing was finalized yet. It was just I had the contract and they had the basic book, and then there's always that kind of tweaking where you go back and things you thought were going to stay in there disappear, and you've got other things that you want to go in, and so there was still some shaping and rewriting and stuff going on into mid 2020 and into the pandemic. So
Someone wants you to talk more about living spherically, Carol.
Carol, yeah, hi Carol, that's great you're here. It's great to see people I know. It means a lot. And Kevin, hi Kev. These are my good friends Carol and Kevin, and I am very grateful because they gave me a banjo in January, and I can't shut up now about my banjo because I'm so excited to be playing it. And I just bought a second one today. I mean, actually, it just arrived today because it's lighter than the one you guys gave me. So I thought, when we can travel, I'm not going to want to leave my banjo behind. And I found a good travel banjo, and I just went ahead and bought it. So, anyway, I'm really excited. But that's part of living spherically, right? I'm taking up the banjo now, and I've played other instruments, but I think that it just means, trying to be open. And I think that's so important because I think I'm a person that tends to close down and tends to shut down and shut out the world. And the pandemic has not been good for those of us who are already sort of loners in a lot of ways. And a lot of writers are used to spending a lot of time alone. So part of that is like, great. Great, I can stay in, no problem. Put me under house arrest, I'll be fine. And it turns out that, you're not so fine, and you begin to need the human contact. And so I just think that that means whatever it means to you, it means saying yes to things and trying to open up to whatever is being offered you in life. It's like the end of that last poem I read, the roses aren't meant for you, but they are, because the world brought them to you at that moment. And sure, that cute guy in the elevator is not going to hand them over to you because he's got somebody else to give them to, but the world has brought you those roses at that moment, and if you can appreciate that, then those are your roses in a way. and I guess that's, you know, part of what I mean by it. But it's just a comment he made in some interview that I always remembered is try to live spherically, live in many directions at once. So, you know, and even if you're very focused on one thing, like you're focused on writing or you're focused on your work or you're focused on whatever, to try to just keep opening up to other things that are there. Um, and it's, you know, just it helps you get through.
There's a number of questions coming in from you, from your friends, and maybe other people you don't know.
Do you want
Um,
to, Tracy?
I'll just let you answer the questions you feel like, unless you want me to read you some of the questions.
No, this is for everyone, so this is a good one. Have you, Susan is asking, have you had the same editor for the last few collections? And I had the same editor for some collections, but not all. So that my answer is yeah, for the last few collections, I've been with Jill Bielowski at Norton. And I think Brittany, you're with Norton now, or your last book came out with Norton, but you had a different publisher and editor for your first book, right?
Yeah, Kim and I had the same editor for the last book, but before that I had a different editor for my first book. So different experiences, different with different editors and different presses. So
Yeah, and it's a beautiful book. It's called Double Portrait. All the poems are called Double Portrait, and it's a really beautiful book. And I don't say that just because you're my friend. I mean, you know, you guys are of course my friends, and I think you're all beautiful writers. Um, but I think I have a sense of judgment about that, and I just think you're all really talented. So Double Portrait is a great book. Tracy, your book is Mouth, and that's your first book, so you haven't had probably the experience of working with different editors, right?
Mm, just you, Kim. You and my editor for my book.
He's not your poetry teacher, and you take the workshops.
Yeah, I've taken workshops with Kim on and off for a number of years. So and I did the grad school thing. So I've had a number of editors, but primarily Mouth, my book, and Kim, my teacher.
And Peter?
Yeah, I mean, I had different editors for the two books, which were with two different presses. Although for the most part, the editing process was very hands off. It was, I mean, mostly they were just functioning as a publisher in my experience. I guess I've heard of poetry editors who are much more hands on, but I've never worked with one on publication that way.
Yeah, mine have been pretty hands off late. I mean, in my earlier book, Tell Me, got a lot of editing when I was with Boa. You know, he had a lot of suggestions, some of which were great and some of which I ignored, which is what you do. You guys know that. I know I see a lot of my students here, former and present, and you know, you take it in and then you have to sort of make your own decisions about what you're going to do with it. And that can be tricky, but that's, you know, you're the one in the end who figures out sort of what you're going to take and what's going to be useful for you and what you're going to just let go of, you know, and go your own way. And, you know, which is great and as well as frustrating sometimes not to know. Um, let's see, anything else in here? Um, question,
Liz Aiken.
sorry,
I was just going to say, Liz posted a question.
what's Liz's question? I'm trying to find it. Oh, seems you surprised yourself with the amount of formal poems that made it in. Do you think form inspires the work? How does it insert itself into the process? How crucial is form? Well, I mean, of course, I use the term formal, and everything has form, of course. A poem has form. And sometimes it's just a little more codified than other times, or sometimes it's a little stricter than other times, the way the poem's put together. Um, but I just started out not knowing anything about those things. You know, it was in graduate school that I learned about form and meter and you know, this whole big chunk of our history of writing in the Western world that I didn't know. And once I learned about it, I became rather obsessed with it, especially with the sonnet and iambic pentameter. And and it just gave me more tools to work with. You know, it gave me more tools, and I think I'm drawn to it also just because of being involved with music. You know, I mean, I'm an amateur musician, but I'm still pretty passionate about it and have been most of my life. And I think it's the music of form, you know, where you have some kind of, if you have a regular rhythm going on, which is what meter is, or you have um, a lot of rhyme, which is, you know, an attention to sound. I mean, both those things are about sound, and it's really what music is. You know, it's rhythm and sound in time, and that's also the definition of a poem. So I love things that kind of, you know, like Bach is one of my favorite composers, and because I mean, I don't find him mechanical at all. I find him sublime, and I think he used you know, the musical conventions of his day, like, you know, counterpoint, and just did incredibly moving music with it. So I think I'm just drawn to it on all those levels, um, and it's a big part of, I think, anybody's poetic education is learning those things and then making them your own. It doesn't mean you're going to end up being a sonnet writer or, you know, writing a book of sestinas or crown of sestinas, but it does mean that you have those tools available to you if you're looking for a way to contain your material or do something with it. You know, it becomes just one more thing that gives you an option that may be the key that can kind of unlock whatever you're trying to say, um, or create something that you didn't know you had to say until you wrote it and until you were trying to get to that rhyme at the end of the line, and suddenly you had different words than you would have come up with on your own, and that leads to different thoughts. So I find form to be also just really generative in making things happen. um, Jen, hi Jen. She's asking me if I'm going to break out the sax. You're probably the only person that remembers that I tried playing the saxophone for a little while, and it's an instrument I didn't try playing for very long, as opposed to other ones that I've spent years with. But no, I'm not going to break out the sax or a musical instrument, but and in fact I gave my sax away um, a while ago. But glad you're here, Jen. Um, what else? Anything else? I don't know how we're doing time-wise, but we probably have time for one or two more. Amy, um, oh, some forms I'm done with. Are there some forms I'm done with? Um, Amy, I think that the sestina is a form that I flirted with that I decided I didn't like, just in terms of writing them, not reading them, but I wrote one very early on and then I wrote another one much later. Um, but I'm not really interested in revisiting that. In fact, there are a lot of forms that I either don't know or I'm not that interested in. So my own, you know, my own formalism is actually pretty narrow, and it's basically sonnets and pantoums, blues forms, you know, things that rhyme, but it's not necessarily, you know, I've never written a triolet, which I know Peter has written some of, and Peter I know is very drawn to form, and those mirror forms are sort of a. Would you say that's something you invented, Peter? The mirror form in
Yeah,
terms of the way they're written? Yeah. And that's another fun thing, is to invent a form and create your own set of rules and try to follow them. Let's see, what else is in here? Um,
Thoughts about your cover, Kim? Somebody's
yeah,
asking about
somebody asked
that.
about
Oh,
the cover. Yeah,
Carol.
Carol. Um, yeah, I'm really happy with this cover. I actually found this stock photo, and it was one of the things I sent to Norton early on, saying, here are some ideas for the cover. Um, and they actually came up with some other covers that I didn't like at all and felt really misrepresented the book. And you know, sometimes when you don't get any control, or you get very limited control over the cover of your book. It tends to be the bigger the publisher, the less control in all ways. And that's one of the trade-offs. If you have a smaller press, they might not have the reach of some larger publishers, but you also get a lot more artistic control, I find, over what you're up to. And this was one that there were a lot of iterations that I was unhappy with, and it was a little touch and go for a while. Like, is this the hill I want to die on? But finally I prevailed on them to come up with some different things, and then they went back to this photo, which was one I had sent them in the beginning, and I thought it was great, because my idea had all along been sort of like almost like a Cinderella slipper that's been left behind, except more grungy than Cinderella, you know. And so this is sort of like, you know, it's just a single shoe, and it's just sort of there on the cracked pavement, and it's been left behind, and you don't really know the story. But it made sense to me as a way to frame the book. So I'm happy that it ended up on the book.
And on that note, we have run out of our allotted time, but this has been absolutely delightful. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Brittany, Peter, Tracy, and thanks to all of you in the room.
Love seeing, I wish, you know, we could all just head over to Vesuvio's or Specs, if it's even still there anymore. Thank you. Thanks for coming, and buy books, buy books, buy books. It's a little subliminal messaging there.